The first baby let out its first cry, and Dr. Soren Hale exhaled relief. 47 minutes of controlled chaos. Monitors spiking. Blood pressure climbing. A delivery that had teetered on the edge of emergency before pulling back from the brink at the last possible second. The kind of night that reminded him why he'd chosen this specialty, not for the routine cases, but for moments like this, when everything balanced on a knife's edge and training was the only thing standing between life and catastrophe. He snapped off one glove, then the other, already mentally stepping out of the moment the way doctors are trained to do. Compartmentalize. Move forward. The next patient was always waiting. The first baby's cry filled the delivery room. Strong, clear, the sound of healthy lungs announcing their arrival to the world. Soren watched the nurse receive the first newborn, his smile fading as a second, immediate contraction gripped Elara. "Wait," the doctor said, turning back to the bed. Soren watched the nurse receive the second twin. Moments later, the second baby arrived. Soren watched the nurse receive the second newborn, her movements practiced and gentle. Then the nurse's face changed. She was holding the first baby against her forearm, beginning the standard assessment when her expression shifted. Not alarm. Nothing that would cause panic in the room, but something. A pause. "Doctor," she said quietly, her voice careful. Soren looked up from the chart he'd been updating. The nurse had turned slightly, adjusting her hold on the first baby so he could see. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. There, just below the first twin's shoulder, was a birthmark. Small, crescent-shaped, perfectly curved, like a sliver of moon pressed into new skin. The same birthmark Soren saw in the mirror every morning. The pen in his hand stopped moving. His breath caught. He knew that mark. He knew it the way you know your own reflection, because it had been part of him for 23 years. His mother had one. His cousin had one. Not common. Not the kind of coincidence that happened to strangers. His eyes moved from the baby to the bed. Elara Wynn looked back at him, and in that moment, 10 months of carefully constructed distance collapsed into nothing. Welcome back to Love Stories with Mr. Tyrell, where we don't do surface-level romance. We go deep into the stories that change people, the ones that make you feel something real, something that stays with you long after the video ends. If this is your first time here, you picked the right story to start with, because what you're about to hear isn't just about love found and lost and found again. It's about the choices we make when we're scared, the secrets we carry when we think we're protecting someone, and what happens when the universe puts two people back in the same room and forces them to face everything they've been running from. Before we go any further, hit that subscribe button. I'm serious. Because what happens after this moment in the delivery room is not something you want to walk into halfway through. Every piece of this story matters, and you need to be here from the beginning. Have you ever walked into a room and felt the floor shift beneath you? Not from anything physical, but from the sudden, crushing weight of a truth you weren't prepared for. Have you ever had a moment where the past you thought you'd sealed away looked you directly in the face and demanded an accounting? That's exactly where we're standing right now. In a delivery room at 2:17 in the morning, rain pressing against the windows like it's trying to get in. Two people staring at each other. Two newborns between them. And a birthmark that says everything neither of them had found the words to say. But to understand what that moment meant, to really feel the weight of it, you have to know what came before. You have to know about the cafe with wobbling chairs, the late-night walks by the ocean, and the promise made on a porch step that neither of them had been able to keep. You have to know about Soren and Elara, about what they had, about what they lost, and about the night that changed everything, even though neither of them knew it at the time. The chart had come to him 40 minutes earlier. Emergency handoff. Soren took the file efficiently, scanning the details. Wynn, Elara. Age 29. 38 weeks. Emergency admission. Elevated blood pressure. He read the name twice. Elara Wynn was not a name you forgot. He stood in the corridor, running through the probability of coincidence for 3 seconds, an eternity for him. Dr. Hale, she's progressing fast. We need you, a nurse said. He walked in. Elara was mid-contraction, her focus locked inward. He had 4 seconds to become the doctor, instead of the man who had once driven 6 hours through a snowstorm for her. By the time she opened her eyes and found his, he was steady, professional, controlled. But Elara Wynn could always see through every version of steady he put on. Her eyes found his, and every carefully arranged wall he'd built in 10 months cracked straight down the middle. She said nothing at first, lacking the breath to spare, but her eyes stayed on his face, showing recognition, shock and fear. Not fear of the delivery, fear of him, of this inevitable moment. The contraction passed. "Soren," she whispered. The word carried the weight of everything. 10 months of nothing, a delivery room at 2 a.m., and the twins with a birthmark that made denial impossible. He moved to the monitors. "I'm going to take care of you," he said, his voice level. "That's all that matters right now." She looked at him a moment longer than a patient looks at a doctor, then looked away. The next few hours were a blur of medical necessity. Underneath his professional exterior, his mind was racing. 10 months ago, their last night together, the months of distance that followed. Elara, alone in Maine, carrying his twin sons. The birthmark made it certain. The thought hit him like a physical blow. The universe had a sense of irony that bordered cruel. "I'm scared," she said at one point. "I know," he said, "but you're strong. I've seen you be strong in ways you never gave yourself credit for. This is just one more time." She reached for him, her fingers finding his hand and closing around it with a grip that said everything their time apart had refused to say. He held on. And 47 minutes later, when the baby's cries filled the room and the birthmark became visible, Soren understood that his life had just been rewritten. The babies were undeniably his. Elara's eyes confirmed it. She had gone through pregnancy alone, made decisions alone, prepared for motherhood alone. Now they had to figure out what came next. The nurse placed the first twin in Elara's arms. Soren stood beside the bed, looking at the family he'd never known he had. "What are their names?" he asked, quietly. "I don't know yet," she whispered. "Nothing seems right." "What about Briar for the first, and Caleb for the second?" "Briar and Caleb Wynn Hale," she said, adding his last name as an invitation. "If you want it," he said. "No pressure. You've handled so much of this alone. You get to choose what happens next." She nodded. Soren pulled a chair close. "We need to talk," he said. "I know. I don't know where to start." "Start with why," he said. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I was scared. Because when you left for Chicago, you became someone with a real future, and I was barely holding my life together. My grandmother was sick, I was working. Double shifts. I kept thinking I should call you, but weeks turned into months, and it felt too late. I thought you'd hate me for showing up with something that would change everything you'd planned. I would never hate you, he said immediately. You say that now, she whispered. He took her hand. I'm here now, he said, and I'm not going anywhere. Not this time. Dawn was still hours away, but the quality of the darkness had shifted. The night was moving toward morning, toward whatever came next. And for the first time in 10 months, Soren and Elara were going to face it together. This is just the beginning of their story. Because what happens next, the conversations they have to have, the trust they have to rebuild, the family they have to figure out how to become, that's where the real work begins. Stay with me, because this story is about to teach us something about love that most people never learn, that sometimes the most beautiful things grow in the spaces between what we planned and what actually happens. Sometimes the best love stories start with the words, "I didn't know how to tell you." To understand what that delivery room meant, to truly feel the weight of that birthmark, that locked gaze, that separation stretching between them, you have to go back to Maine. Coastal Maine, in early October. Soren Hale arrived on a tight budget and a scholarship. He was 22, pre-med, focused. The scholarship was his whole plan. He found the cafe by accident. The chairs wobbled, but the coffee was drinkable. The woman behind the counter, Elara Wynn, brought him coffee he hadn't ordered, saying, "You look like you need this more than a menu." They built their relationship slowly, one conversation at a time. She told him she was saving for design school, wanting to make spaces feel intentional. He told her he wanted to fix people after watching his mother come home exhausted from the hospital. They exchanged numbers. Tuesday and Thursday mornings belonged to the cafe. Late-night walks along the water started in November. Their first kiss was on a stretch of slick shore, deliberate and knowing. Their tenderness was built on small things, her foot tapping his under the table, his hand finding hers, her sketching while he studied, him staying beside her when her anxiety spiked. One evening in early spring, he said it, "I'm not going anywhere." She leaned her head against his shoulder and said, "Okay." The way she said it held the weight of someone who needed to hear exactly that. The University of Chicago School of Medicine acceptance letter came in April. Full acceptance. Merit-based funding. Soren called Elara first. She celebrated with him, saying, "Soren, this is everything you've been working for." The complication was immediate. Chicago was demanding. A program that didn't leave space for their relationship. The timing was terrible. Elara's grandmother, who had raised her, was declining, and Elara had quietly taken on more of her care. In the same month, Elara received acceptance to a local practical design program. 2 acceptances. 2 opposite directions. He asked her to come with him. "I can't," she said. He pushed back. "So that's it. We just what? We accept this." "I don't want to be the thing you feel guilty about," she said. "When you look at your life and try to figure out what costs too much, I don't want to be in that column. I refuse to be that." He couldn't argue. She was heartbreakingly, maddeningly not wrong. Their last night together was quiet, full of care, a knowing form of goodbye. He drove to Chicago 6 days later. It wasn't a breakup so much as a fading, a slow, quiet withdrawal. Calls and texts grew shorter, compressed into the margins of 2 overcrowded lives. Both were exhausted. He, drowning in coursework, she, drowning in caregiving. Love, however real, could not sustain itself entirely on memory and intention when the present demanded everything they had. One day, Soren realized he hadn't heard her voice in 3 weeks. He told himself he would call tomorrow. Tomorrow came. He didn't call. She didn't call either. And just like that, without fanfare, without closure, Elara Wynn moved from the present tense of his life into the past. He carried her there quietly, and he didn't look back. Until a delivery room at 2:17 in the morning handed her back to him, and with her, twin sons with a crescent-shaped birthmark and 10 months of estrangement that suddenly needed to account for everything. The delivery room settled into a heavy quiet now. Soren sat holding Briar for the first time, the baby small and warm against his chest, the birthmark undeniable proof of a connection. "How long have you known?" Soren asked. "Since about 12 weeks. The birthmark was so clear on the screen, and I knew. And you never thought to call me." "I thought about it every day. I picked up the phone so many times, but every time I got close, I remembered how we ended, how we just faded. And I thought, if he wanted to stay in touch, he would have. If I mattered enough, the distance wouldn't have been so easy for him." "It wasn't easy," Soren said. "It was just simpler, and I told myself that was the same thing." "I know. I did the same thing. But when I found out about the babies, simple wasn't an option anymore, and I had to decide whether to complicate your life or handle it myself." "You chose to protect me from a choice you didn't ask for," Soren stated. "You were building something important, Soren. You were becoming the doctor you'd always wanted to be, and I was barely keeping my head above water. My grandmother died 6 months after you left. I was working 3 jobs. I was not in a position to be anyone's partner, let alone someone who was trying to save lives for a living." Soren shifted Briar. "You don't get to decide for me what I can handle, Elara. That's not protection. That's control. Maybe you're right. Maybe it was control. But it was also love. Messy, imperfect love that didn't know how to ask for help without feeling like a burden." "A burden? Is that really what you thought you'd be?" "I knew I would be. I was tired of being the person who needed more than she could give back. And you were becoming someone who deserved better than that." Soren paused. "You know what the hardest part is? It's that you were right about some of it. I was so focused on proving myself that I probably would have seen this as a complication. Not because I didn't love you, but because I was 23 and terrified and convinced that any deviation from the plan would mean failure. But here's what you got wrong," he continued. "You assumed I wouldn't grow. You didn't give me the chance to surprise you. I know. But we let fear make our decisions, and look where it got us. Twin sons I didn't know existed. You going through pregnancy and labor alone. We can't get those years back, but we can decide what happens next." "What do you want to happen next?" "I want to be their father. Not just biologically, but actually. And I want to figure out what that means for us. Not what we were, but what we could be now. I don't know if I can do that." "Trust you again," she said. "Then we don't build this on the same foundation we built it on before," he said. "We build it on actions, on showing up, on doing the work even when it's hard. I missed you. Every day I missed you," she admitted. "But missing someone and trusting them again are different things." "I know," he said. "And I'm not asking you to trust me today. I'm asking you to let me earn it back, one day at a time." "Can I ask you something?" Soren asked. "Were you planning to tell me? Ever?" "I don't know," she said finally. "I told myself I was waiting for courage I wasn't sure I'd ever find. I'm not proud of that, but I'm being honest. Well, the universe took the choice away from both of us. Here we are. Here we are, she agreed. You don't have to be alone anymore, he said quietly. You don't have to carry everything by yourself. Okay, she said finally, but we take this slow. We figure out how to be parents first. Everything else, we'll see. Hello, boys, Soren said softly to his sons. I'm your dad. I know I'm late to the party, but I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere. Dawn came slowly. Elara had dozed fitfully. The twins were in the nursery. I've been thinking, Elara said quietly, about building this on actions instead of promises. And, Soren asked, this isn't just about us anymore. It's about the boys. And I won't let them grow up in the middle of something unstable. I agree. So what does that mean, practically? It means we figure out how to be good parents first. Separately and together. We learn how to communicate without all the history getting in the way. And we're honest about what we can and can't give each other. What I can't give you is the version of myself I was 10 months ago, she continued. I'm different now. Harder in some ways. More careful. Soren nodded. I can give you consistency. I can give you a partner in raising the boys, someone who shows up for the hard stuff and the boring stuff. What I can't give you is a guarantee that I won't make mistakes, but I can promise that I'll own them and learn from them. I need you to know I'm not as trusting now, Elara warned. If we try to build something together, you're going to see parts of me that aren't easy to love, parts that are scared and defensive. Are you prepared for that? I'm not the same person either, he said. I've spent 10 months convincing myself that being alone was a choice instead of a failure. So yes, I'm prepared for the parts of you that aren't easy to love, because I'm hoping you'll be prepared for the same thing from me. A nurse brought the twins in for feeding. Soren watched with awe. I have a question for you, Elara said eventually. What does this look like, practically? You live in Chicago. I live in Maine. We can't be in 2 places at once. I don't know yet, Soren admitted. But I know I'm not going to be a weekend father. I want to be present for the ordinary stuff too. That's a nice sentiment. But how does it work in practice? You have a career in Chicago. Maybe it's time to rebuild that life. Maybe Chicago was the right choice 10 months ago, but it's not the right choice now. I'd consider moving back to Maine. Don't make that decision right now. Make it because it's what you actually want, for the right reasons, she cautioned. I'm serious about being present. Whatever that looks like, wherever that means I need to be, he confirmed. We'll need help, Elara said. A family counselor. Someone who can help us navigate this without making it about our history or our feelings. I'd like that, Soren said. Promise me that if this doesn't work, if we try to co-parent and it becomes toxic or impossible, you won't disappear again. Promise me that you'll find a way to be their father even if you can't be my partner. I promise. Whatever happens between us, I will always be their father. That's not conditional on anything else. Okay, then we can try this. Slowly, carefully, with a lot of help and a lot of patience. It was real. It was honest. It was built on the understanding that love, lasting love, was about choices. Daily choices to show up, to do the work, to put someone else's needs alongside your own. 3 months later, Soren stood in the doorway of Elara's small apartment in Portland, Maine, holding groceries and watching her struggle to soothe a crying twin while folding laundry. Hey, he said quietly. You're early. He's been fussy all day, she said, looking exhausted. Soren took a twin in his arms and began the gentle swaying motion he'd learned. Its crying softened. This was their routine now. 3 evenings a week, Soren drove the hour and a half from the emergency department in Portland, where he'd taken a position. Leaving Chicago had meant sacrificing prestige, but success without connection had felt hollow. He'd made the choice carefully, deliberately. Elara had started her own design consulting business, juggling client meetings with the 3-month-olds. Do you ever regret it? Coming back here? Changing your whole life? Elara asked. The question she always carried. No, he said finally. I don't regret it. Not because it's perfect or easy, but because it's real. Because it matters in a way that goes beyond just me. He looked at her directly. For 10 months, I built a life that looked successful from the outside but felt empty on the inside. I told myself that was the price of achievement, that meaning was a luxury I couldn't afford. But I was wrong. Even if things don't work out between us, she pressed. Even then, he said without hesitation, being their father isn't contingent on anything else. It's the most important thing I'll ever do. Thank you for saying that, for meaning it. Later, as Soren prepared the boys for bed, Elara had taken a shower and looked more relaxed. I'm starting to believe you, she said, about staying, about being present. And that scares me almost as much as not believing you did. What scares you about it? He asked. That I'll start depending on you, that I'll let myself need you. And then if something happens, if you change your mind or life gets complicated, I'll be back where I started, except worse because the boys will be attached to you too. I can't promise that life won't get complicated, but I can promise that I won't disappear again. Even if everything else falls apart, I will be their father. That's not negotiable. Is that what you want? For us to just be co-parents? He asked. I don't know, she said finally. I know I care about you. I know I enjoy spending time with you. I know that when you're here, everything feels easier. But I also know that I'm different now, more cautious. What would it take? Time, she said. Consistency. Proof that this version of us can handle conflict without falling apart. Proof that we can disagree about something important and still show up for each other the next day. We'll get there, he said, or we won't. But either way, we'll figure out how to be good parents. That's the foundation everything else gets built on. When Soren finally left that night, he felt contentment. It wasn't the life he'd planned, but it was real. It was meaningful. It was built on the harder kind of love that comes from choice. Let me talk to you directly for a moment, because Soren and Elara's story teaches us something crucial about love that most people never learn. Real love isn't about perfect timing or ideal circumstances. It's not about finding someone who completes you or makes you whole. Real love is about finding someone worth doing the work with, someone worth showing up for, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Here's what Soren and Elara learned the hard way, and what I want you to understand. First, silence doesn't protect love. It starves it. If you care about someone, speak while there's still time. Don't let pride or fear, or the assumption that they already know, keep you from saying what needs to be said. Soren and Elara lost 10 months because neither of them was brave enough to have the hard conversations. Don't let that be your story. Second, you can't protect someone by making their choices for them. Elara thought she was being selfless by carrying the boys alone, but what she was really doing was deciding for Soren what he could handle. Real love gives people the dignity of choice. It trusts them to know their own minds and make their own decisions, even when those decisions might be difficult. Third, second chances aren't owed. They're earned. Soren didn't get Elara back because they had history, or because he was the boy's father. He earned his place in their lives by showing up consistently, by doing the work of rebuilding trust, by proving through actions that his words meant something. If you want someone to trust you again, don't ask for it. Earn it. Fourth, the deepest intimacy isn't always romantic. Sometimes it's just presence. It's holding someone's hand during a contraction. It's taking the night feeding so they can sleep. It's bringing groceries on a Tuesday evening when they're overwhelmed. The love that lasts is built on these small, unglamorous acts of care. And finally, fear will always tell you to protect yourself by leaving. Love tells you to stay and build anyway. Both Soren and Elara let fear make their decisions for years. Fear of being a burden, fear of being hurt, fear of not being enough. But love, real love, asks you to stay even when it's scary, to build even when the foundation feels uncertain, to choose someone even when you can't guarantee the outcome. 6 months after that night in the delivery room, Soren proposed to Elara, not with a ring or a grand gesture, but with a simple question asked on an ordinary Tuesday evening while they were bathing the boys together. "What would you think about making this official?" He said, soap bubbles on his hands, their suns splashing happily between them. "Making what official?" she asked, though she knew what he meant. "Us. This family. This life we're building together." She was quiet for a moment, watching a twin grab for the rubber duck floating just out of his reach. "Ask me again in 6 months," she said finally, "when we've made it through a full year of this, when we've seen each other at our worst and decided we still want to stay." So he did. 6 months later, on a beach in Maine where they'd walked together years before, he asked again. This time, she said yes, not because it was romantic or because the timing was perfect, but because they'd done the work, because they'd proven to themselves and each other that they could build something lasting. They were married 3 months later, in a small ceremony with the boys as their only witnesses, making promises they'd already been keeping for over a year. Promises to show up, to do the work, to choose each other daily. It wasn't the love story either of them had imagined, but it was theirs, and it was real. 1. Hit that like button. Not just because it helps the algorithm, though it does, but because it tells me this kind of story matters to you, that you want more of this. That real love, messy love, earned love, is worth telling. 2. Subscribe to Love Stories with Mr. Tyrell, because we are just getting started. There are more stories like this. Stories about people who mess up, who try again, who choose love even when it's hard. Stories about second chances and unexpected families, and the courage it takes to build something real. And I want you here for all of them. 3. Comment below and tell me, what lesson hit you hardest? Was it about silence? About fear? About second chances? About the difference between romance and real intimacy? I read every single comment. Your words matter to me, and they matter to the people who come after you, looking for something that resonates. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message today, someone navigating a second chance, someone carrying a secret, someone trying to figure out if love is worth the risk, share this video with them. You might just change their perspective. You might just give them the courage to stay when fear is telling them to run. Because here's what I want you to remember from Soren and Elara's story. Love isn't about perfect timing. It's not about having all your plans in place or waiting until you're ready. It's about showing up, even when it's hard, even when you're scared, even when you don't have all the answers. It's about choosing someone not just in the good moments, but in the ordinary ones. The Tuesday evenings, when someone's overwhelmed. The middle of the night feedings. The difficult conversations that would be easier to avoid. Real love isn't a feeling you fall into. It's a choice you make every day, in small ways and big ones, in the moments when it's easy, and especially in the moments when it's not. Soren and Elara didn't get their happy ending because the universe owed them one. They got it because they did the work, because they chose each other not just once in a moment of emotion, but repeatedly in the quiet hours when no one was watching. That's the kind of love that lasts. That's the kind of love that changes lives. That's the kind of love worth fighting for. Until next time, remember this: your story isn't over. Sometimes the most beautiful chapters are the ones you never saw coming. Sometimes the best love stories start with the words, "I didn't know how to tell you." Sometimes the family you're meant to have finds you in a delivery room at 2:17 in the morning, with rain on the windows and a birthmark that changes everything. This is Mr. Tyrell, reminding you that love, real love, is always worth the risk. Always.